So I'd like to welcome everyone here today to this gathering to remember Professor Brij Gopal and his work in the space of Indian wetlands. Thank you so much for joining us. I welcome his family here today, his granddaughter Surabhi, his daughter Sudha, his niece, and many more of his family members. Thank you so much for being with us today to remember Professor Gopal. A few words from my side before we move you to see a little audio-visual prepared by us. I was fortunate to be one of Professor Gopal's students between 1988 to about 92, 93. And during that period, he was associate professor at the School of Environmental Sciences in JNU. And later I came back and did my postdoc again for 3 years, 2003 starting. And later on in my professional life, worked on numerous projects, worked on a lot of publications together. And in fact, I spoke to him the day before he passed and had a 20-minute discussion on an issue which he feels very strongly about. It was about putting too much science into a paper we were just completing on policy. And I wanted it simpler and a little less science. While he believed, as he always did, that the detailed and complete argument must be defined so that a policymaker could take decisions based on every little detail. And that's what kind of defines him and his life and his style of working to me. His steadfast belief that a detailed scientific explanation of an issue should speak for itself. I met him for the first time in his lab in JNU in 1988. And the first impression, I think, which a lot of people carried with themselves from his rooms and his lab, were the piles and piles of books and journals and documents that he had. I mean, in JNU, most of the professors have a large lab and an attached small room. And the lab used to be half filled with documents. His room used to be filled with papers. And I think one of the strongest memories one carries is the piles of these overflowing over the books, shelves from the ground to the roof, growing higher by the day, books which he reviewed, books, journals of which he was editor, publications in which he was being published, and like his favorite plant, the water hyacinth, on which he wrote a tome. He loved telling us, it doubled its area and expanse and volume in 48 hours. I think sometimes his books seem to double themselves in number in 48 hours. To the extent that sometimes we couldn't see him, sitting behind these pile of books. His many students, I think, have carried his love for books with them, and which has held all of them and me definitely in good stead even today. He had many achievements, many achievements, and right from his very, very early days, which highlight the fact that I think that he sought excellence in everything he did. He was the first recipient of the Science Academy Medal for Young Scientists in 1974 from the Indian National Science Academy, New Delhi, presented to him by the Prime Minister of India. The Gold Medal of the Vigyan Academy, Allahabad, for the best book in Hindi on ecology. He had the Alexander von Humboldt Fellowship for postdoctoral work in Germany at the Max Planck Institute of Limnology in Plön in 82-83, a period which I think gave enormous direction to his life. He referred to it again and again. And he went back to the institute several times later in life, I think 5 or 6 times at least. He received the Norman Thienman Award, the medal, in 2004, given out by the International Association of Limnology. The first, and I think the only award given to any scientist outside Europe and North America. He was the lead author of the wetland section of the IPCC, a shared honor on the Nobel Peace Prize of 2007. And those are just some of the awards that he got. He held many national and international positions, was a member and chair of numerous working groups and committees on wetland issues and more in issues of wetland management and wetland services, including state and central level committees, Supreme Court committees for judgments. He had been an advisor and a guide to many, many organizations in the country, including WWF India, the Wetlands International Team in India, and many other institutions. He built and looked after the National Institute of Ecology with a passion which saw him compromising often on personal time and funds for the organization. He edited the journal right till the end. Its journal is called the International Journal of Ecology and Environmental Sciences. He started editing it in 1974, and till his last week, he was editing it. He was on the editorial boards of numerous international journals, including the Hydrobiologia out of the Netherlands, the Marine and Freshwater Research from Australia, River Research Applications, Wiley's eminent UK publication, and Wetland Ecology and Management, also from the Netherlands. If you look at his publications covered a huge gamut of subjects related to wetlands and rivers and lakes and water bodies. It's just a huge volume of work which he has done in his life. In core aquatic plant biodiversity and ecology, there are almost 200 papers, another 100 on conservation and management of aquatic systems, a whole bunch of papers on climate change issues. There's just such a huge gamut of his work which he has left behind. I really don't think that there is another single person, another single body of work of this dimension on this subject in the country. He thought in multiple directions when it came to wetlands and was way ahead of his time on the subject. He was touching upon issues of economics in ecology way before it became a trend in the country. In 1976, his paper on aquatic weeds and their area expanded into services, initially for wetlands and lakes, later moving into river studies. His thoughts on the river regulation zone, I think we all are very, very familiar with. Professor Gopal was one of the most honest persons I worked with. And my huge respect for him comes not just from his single-minded passion for wetlands and water bodies, or his amazing work ethics, but also from the fact that he believed that things could be done. They really could be done, they could get better, and that the only way to do them was just to keep doing it again and again and again till it got done. He invested his time and his personal funds again and again in his work and in what he believed. He kept it going when many others fell by the wayside. We know how difficult it is to change policy in this country, even when common sense and pure science dictates it. But he never lost hope, and that was amazing, that wetlands and river systems could and would someday be conserved. And like the Thames, which now found new life and runs fresh through London, our rivers too one day would thrive with the diversity and richness they deserve. Professor Gopal was simple in the way he lived and in the way he worked and in the way he spoke. Straightforward. He never hesitated to state what he thought was right and what he thought was correct. He was a force to be reckoned with, and his going has left behind a huge legacy and a gap which will need many, many of us to work towards filling. My deepest condolences to his family who joins us here today to remember Professor Gopal and his work. And thank you so much for listening to my thoughts. We have an audio visual, which I will request Siddharth to put on for us, following which his family, and then many others here will speak. Siddharth.
Yes, just 5 seconds.
Yeah. Just give us a couple of minutes while we put on the audio visual.
All right, I'm starting this now.
Okay, go ahead.
I have been hearing, and most of you know this, it is more than 45 years, nearly 45 years, that we have been talking of pollution control, principally for the rivers. And today again we are talking of Nirmalta and the cleaning of the river. It all started. Planners are ignoring the consequence of their own actions, and a new plan, which is this. A large number of all red dots are the planned hydropower projects. The dams will be created right up to the glaciers. At least I can talk about what needs to be done to revive the river. If we know that why the river is dying and how the river gradually dies, we need to only look at again the same 5 points. We need to restore the habitats, we need to restore the flow regimes, restore the floodplains, prevent pollution, and restore the catchments. And I think this is the sequence in which we have to go.
Thank you, Siddharth, for that beautiful journey that we've seen. I will now request some of the family members to speak before us. Mrs. Priyanka Agarwal, are you there, ma'am?
Yes, I am.
Yeah,
Am I?
close yours.
Hello, everyone. I'm Priyanka, or Manuji, as Tauji would call me. Tauji, Dr. Brij Gopal would call me. When we were younger, we did not have grandparents on our dad's side. It was Tauji who was the grandfather figure for us. Like all grandparents, he would get us the best gifts, the best gadgets, the best collections, from around the world. Sometimes more for us than for his own kids, I'd like to believe. He wasn't around much in his younger years, but his legends were always around. My dad, his brother, Dr. Gupta, who's here, would share towering stories about Tauji. My most favorite one being when, he was finishing school, he wanted to be a doctor, a medical surgeon, but he was destined to do greater things, I think. It's even odd to say that because, becoming a doctor is no small feat to begin with. He unfortunately fractured his hand and he could not fully recover to continue that journey. But that gave birth to Dr. Brij Gopal that we all know of. He learned to write and work all over again using his left hand. He switched from being a biologist to an environmentalist. He found a new vision, a new path, a new legacy. Little did he know that he would go on to become what I'd like to call the riverman of India. All we knew about him was that he was a great scientist. After all, he was winning highly coveted awards and getting called upon by top officials from around the world. But we never understood the gravity of the problem he was solving. He was reminding the world how important our river and wetlands are. He was influencing policy to change our action now before it's too late. I don't think we fully understand what he understood or knew, but we now recognize why he never slowed down or stopped doing what he did. He was out there to make a difference, the kind of stuff one only thinks about or talks about in our living rooms. He was on that mission, quite literally. I've been binge watching his videos, his art, I've been reading his articles, his open letters. I'm gradually learning about his enormous body of work that he developed over his lifetime. I feel proud and lucky to have him as my Tauji. And I feel very grateful to be with all of you esteemed individuals who worked with him tirelessly to bring a change to our environment. I thank you all on behalf of my entire family to commemorate him. He was always an inspiration and will continue to be. Hope we all carry his legacy forward. May the Riverman show us the path and remain alive in our mind and actions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Priyanka, for that very, very thoughtful and heart-touching piece. Surabhi, Professor Gopal's granddaughter is here. Surabhi, can you turn on your...
Yes.
There you are.
Yes, thank you so much.
Please go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. I am speaking this on behalf of his grandchildren. Obviously, there is so much I want to say about Dada. Because my parents can't speak, I was the link between them and him, and I talked to him on the behalf of my parents too. Being an inquisitive child, I asked him so many questions, and the answers always turned out to be detailed ones, including numerous other topics. In other words, they were a quick lecture. He used to show me his collections, pictures from his projects, whether it was a group of flamingos or Yamuna, where it was uniquely 1 meter wide. And he told me anecdotes from his personal life, meetings, travels, and work. I believe that's where my interest in natural sciences came from. Now that I come to think of it, I realize that when he asked me questions like, why do you think there are holes in the riverbed? Or how does one evaluate the economic value of a river? He was indirectly teaching me. When my 10th board result came out, he was the happiest. I wish he was here to hear my 12th class result as well. He was my ultimate guide to college applications and career related things because I share my interest with him. His library in our basement with the rustic smell of old paper is one of my favorite places to be. Some people may know him as a reserved person, but he was just like any other grandfather is known to be. He rescued us when our parents scolded us, told stories, laughed on ridiculous things my brother and I did. His voice when he spoke on phone and said, "Ha, hello," will always ring in my head. I am well aware of his vast contribution to the scientific community, and he was so much more than just our family. He was extraordinary, and I feel so proud to be his granddaughter. Thank you.
Thank you, Surabhi. That was beautiful. Siddharth, is Mr. Jairam Ramesh here yet?
I don't think he's joined yet. I think he.
Okay. Then I'll move on and just let me know when he joins. Then we'll break accordingly. Professor Marotia.
Yes.
Marotia sahab, aap.
Yes, I am here.
Haan, sir. Can you? It would be nice if you could turn on your camera, sir.
Yeah, there's okay. Did you see me now?
Sir, abhi nahi. So maybe you could go ahead.
Yeah, well, dear friends, with both great affection and a deep sadness, I remember my very dear friend Professor Brij Gopal. For nearly 3 decades, we worked together on a large number of the research projects and the programs. To name few, as Dr. Malvika Chauhan has mentioned, ecological restoration, ecosystem services of River Ganga, ecosystem services of River Ken and Betwa link and the ecological chaos, water and food security in Bundelkhand, and as many are aware that he is the one who has been advocated throughout his life that small wetlands are the best alternative to the big reservoir and the dams. In fact, many young researchers work with him in our project, and he had enormous passion to mentor each member of the team. Besides his in-depth knowledge of the subject, friends, he was known for his professional integrity, ethics, uprightness, and the sense of fair play, which you hardly find, uh, in the academia. He was a great human being over 4 decades, as Dr. Malvika Chauhan has already mentioned. He has worked very hard to nurture National Institute of Ecology and many other institutes. I had a unique privilege to serve this great institution for 2 terms president and had the opportunity to work on several things which I mentioned earlier. Only few days before he left all of us, we had planned 2 events in Khajuraho to celebrate World Wetland Day and World Water Day. Professor Brij Gopal may not be physically with us, but his legacy inspires and will definitely sustain us to work towards the goal he had dreamed of for a better society and ecology. I don't know how and when I can get over the fact that Professor Brij Gopal is not physically with us. I express my gratitude to India River Forum, Water Conflict Forum, and India Water Portal for organizing this remembrance meeting. Thank you so much.
आज सर निकाल लो
Thank you, Marothia Sahab. I think Sri Jairam Ramesh is with us. Hello, sir.
Hi.
So over to you, sir. Few words from your side.
Well, I'm sorry if I'm a little delayed. I just got back. I knew Professor Gopal, I wouldn't say that I knew him very well, but when I became Environment Minister, I got to know him. And over the last 2 years, particularly in 2008, beginning 2018, we used to be in fairly close contact with each other in the context of the expert committee that had been set up by the National Green Tribunal to monitor the programs for the cleaning of the river Yamuna. In fact, I had suggested to Shailaja Chandra and Mr. Sajwan, the 2-member committee, that they should be getting a lot of advice and suggestions from Dr. Brij Gopal, which I think they did. And so in many ways, my contact with him resumed 2 years ago. But there's no question that when it came to issues relating to the wetlands, in 2009 and 2010, about the delineation, identification of wetlands, the protection of wetlands, and what further legal measures required to be taken, including the concept that had been then floated of the RRZ, the River Regulation Zone, somewhat along the lines of the coastal regulation zone. And then, of course, the RRZ has been talked about. It's not a reality still. It's been raised in Parliament. But I remember Dr. Brij Gopal sending me, and I still have them, some very useful material on this issue. So he was a scholar. I mean, I remember him as a scholar. I remember him as a person deeply dedicated to the cause of wetland conservation, river conservation, and of course, the broader issue of environmental protection as well. I think he epitomized the interface between public policy and academic research, that academic research should inform public policy, and public policy in turn should be guided by the world of scholarship. And I think there are very few people like Dr. Brij Gopal, in today's India. You either have total academics or you have total activists. But I think he was one person who bridged the two worlds very well. And he left behind a large army of friends, large army of admirers. And I've been to many places where the discussion has been on wetlands, and the name of Dr. Brij Gopal has almost invariably been mentioned. So I would like to join this gathering of his friends, of his family, of his students, of his admirers, in paying tribute to a remarkable scholar, to a dedicated environmentalist, but who saw environment through the prism of science and scientific work. So thank you, Malvika, for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, sir. I'd like to request Shri Ravi Singh Ji, WWF CEO. Ravi, are you here?
Yes.
Would you like to take the floor?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to speak on Shri Brij Gopal Ji. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Particularly to Brij Gopal Ji's family who is here, and to his close friends, just like to say that on behalf of my organization and personally, we feel a great void in his passing. We were very close. He was an advisor. He was a senior guide and counsel, and he was a person to whom we reverted to for guidance and comments and for improvement of the work that we were doing. A number of environmentalists will benefit from his work, both his work as a scientist and also as a human being. He was very sensitive to people, younger generations particularly, to guide them in the correct way of looking at the issues of water. Brij Gopal Ji was, someone mentioned that whatever you asked him, he gave a very detailed reply to it, because he knew that in this serious subject, there is no shortcut. I've had many meetings with him. We talked about many things, not just this particular subject, but the entire way the ecology of the world was declining, and that we needed more than just emotion and passion and feeling, and the odd comment, kuch karna chahiye and all that. He was the one who also guided that the way to do this is, even after retirement, he said, he'd taken on some work in Bundelkhand, which I knew and I looked at in some detail, admired him for it, for the fact that he traveled there at his age and was doing work on those water structures in Bundelkhand, in an area which was completely stressed sometimes in the year as far as water was concerned. So he led by example, and also with the vast amount of academic and scientific knowledge he had, sometimes he could compress certain things into such a small way that you understood it very, very easily. We were very close to him from WWF India. Many of my staff will miss him very much. He had a podium with us anytime. He was always welcome, and it made a big difference to our work. I'd like to relate a small incident. The last time I met him, he was with us in Hyderpur. Hyderpur is a very large wetland upstream of the barrage of Bijnor on the Ganga. And this, I was talking to him about the fact that here we have, 25,000 geese, and we have 15,000 other birds collected, and we have otters, and we have mahseer, and we have the barasinga. And this is what gives the life to this whole place. And he mentioned to me the fact that there is a Ganga here, but there's other small river called Solanki, Sodani. And that river contributes to this great life by providing different kinds of values into the water, which adds to the minerals that are already there. And in his speech, which he gave to hundreds of school children and people who had come there on World Wetland Day, I felt like there was a cone, a voice and wisdom rising like this, like like a small whirlpool above his head, and which would go above and show us the entire scenario of Hyderpur Jheel. And his voice, I still remember, so calm, so clear, so full of knowledge, and so genuine that he got a lot of respect from people who heard him. And it will stay with us. That kind of a lesson will stay with us for a very long time. We will miss Brij Gopalji very much. And I hope that we will be able to take forward his work in the way he guided us, in the way he led us, and with his great humanism and his combination of humanism and science. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to request Professor Max Finlayson, Charles Sturt University, ex-director, Institute of Land, Water and Society. Max, are you on?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to actually say a few words in memory of my friend, our friend and colleague, Brij Gopal. My first direct contact with Brij came back in 1981 when he attended the International Botanical Congress in Sydney, in Australia. I knew of his work on water plants and wetlands, and I was very keen to meet the plant expert from India, but I was very shy about meeting this expert, this guru of our sciences. But in the company of my senior colleague, Dr. David Mitchell, who unfortunately is unable to be here tonight, but also sends his condolences to everyone. We did spend another week talking about wetland plants, about ecology, about the state of science, about how we did it. It was fascinating. Here I was, a young scientist, meeting this knowledgeable and very open and sharing person. I mentioned that Dr. Mitchell was unable to join us. He, along with Brij, were two of the major water plant weed experts back in those years, and together helped contribute to our understanding of how we managed weeds in different parts of the world, not just in India, not just in Australia, but in all around the world. Their impact, their combined impact was huge. So this was the start of almost 40 years of my professional and personal interaction with Brij. Being the beneficiary of his immense knowledge about plants and wetlands and ecology, and his willingness to share this knowledge and engage in earnest discussions. This interaction occurred in many places, including at the Intercol International Wetland Conferences, which were held every 4 years, with the first being held in India, which Brij organised. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend that one. And also at the Society of Wetland Scientists international meetings, which we regularly attended. It's my pleasure to be noted that we are both international fellows of that society. It's a pleasure to be listed alongside Brij. We also met in some wonderful wetlands around the world, including the lakes and ancient fish pond landscape of South Bohemia in Europe, the Okavango Delta, the magnificent inland delta in Africa, and the Pantanal wetlands in South America, probably the biggest wetlands in the world. These are all very different places with different people, all of who welcomed Brij and wanted to engage with his immense knowledge, his critical mind, and his thirst for knowledge. In the Pantanal with Prof Wolfgang Jung, another Wetland Society International Fellow, I witnessed Brij's great ability to examine the work of many scientists and students and provide thought-provoking advice on many, many different subjects. His ability to assess what others were doing and to provide such advice was impressive, and I think was one of his trademarks. We cooperated together and wrote several scientific papers about wetlands and worked together on scientific journals. This passion for sharing knowledge into publishing and sharing things in the written format. This was mainly... Sorry, am I still hearing me?
Yes, sorry about that.
Please go ahead, Max.
Sorry, it's okay. we had many things in common around the world, bonded by our shared interest and knowledge, and always attentively listening to Brij as he shared his knowledge and understanding of ecology and wetlands and rivers. Thank you, my friend, for all those wonderful times and for sharing your knowledge. I end by offering my condolences to Brij's family, friends, and colleagues. He was a valuable part of my life, both professionally and personally. And thank you again for the opportunity to share these words. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Max, for taking out the time and joining us today and sharing your thoughts with everyone. I'd like to request Manojji, aap hain, who needs no introduction, the Yamuna Jio Abhiyan and the India River Forum. Manojji, you there? Siddharth, can you tell me? There you are. Please, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Malvika ji. Before I start, may I request, please make a request, that people who are not speaking, if they could put off their videos, because if there are too many people on video here, then the sound gets really impacted. So please, if you could put off your videos. I speak today on behalf of India Rivers Forum and Water Conflicts Forum, two forums with whom Professor Brij Gopal was very closely associated. India Rivers Forum, as you know, is a consortium of WWF India, Intact, Toxic Link, Sender, People Science Institute, and Peace Institute Charitable Trust. Whereas Water Conflicts Forum is short for Forum for Policy Dialogue on Water Conflicts in India. Professor Gopal was very closely associated with these two forums and was very well known to the members there. Now, I'm aware that it is an occasion to celebrate his life and his achievements. Many here have already done so and more would follow. Many of you are far more knowledgeable about him than I am. But still, I take this opportunity to share my understanding of Professor Brij Gopal as a person. Based on my interactions with him from time to time since 2007. Many of those interactions were rather formal in a meeting or in a group, but I was very fortunate to spend some really good quality time with him and have intimate interactions with him at his favorite place, which is Pira village on the outskirts of Khajuraho, where he had started the Center for Inland Waters in South Asia, his dream project. We all know that his scholarship was vast. You mention any topic, and he had ready references to them sitting in his laptop. You pose him any topic, you pose him a problem or send him a draft. And you see, despite his extremely busy schedule, you would get an overnight response from him. He was a true researcher and a mentor in that sense, for he would not rest till he had answered you. He was possessed of the restlessness of a true teacher. He was a very gracious host. Despite living all by himself at Pira, without any help, for he was constantly in and out of that place. But he would make you feel entirely at home once you were there. And I have experienced this time and again. You see, when I'm speaking to you at the moment, I can visualize Professor Brij Gopal at that building in Pira. It is known that he was a much respected name the world over in the field of wetland ecology and river science. But he was also a very private and a self-effacing person. As a result, despite his vast scholarship, the kind of recognition, a popular recognition, he got a lot of recognition from his peers. But a popular recognition, I think if there is one scientist who was really fit to be bestowed Padma Vibhushan, at least, then that was Professor Brij Gopal for his excellent work. The nation has lost in him. He was not a diplomat. And as a true man of science, he was known to call a spade, no matter what. Ever ready to correct a scientific wrong, he would speak his mind irrespective of the audience. Sometimes this trait was even appreciated. And there is a long story, I don't have time to narrate that. But this is how he came to initiate and lead the nation since 2002, the campaign for legal protection to the river floodplains in power has ensured that the said notification is still not being notified. It has not materialized in his lifetime, although he was happy that at least the Ganga authorities notification of 2016 did include part of it. For us at the India Rivers Forum, his presence and contributions at our annual event since 2014, which is the India River Week, was always very rich and to the point. We remain ever grateful to him for that. So have been his interactions with the members of the Water Conflicts Forum. his incisive and practical comments on sand mining at the most recent India River Week in late November 2020, where India River Forum, Water Conflicts Forum, and ATRI collaborated, that all remains a living testimony. On a personal note, I now would always regret not hearing any more from him, his endearing Mishra ji, in person or on phone, because you see, I kept on reminding him, sir, I fancy myself as your student. I am much younger in age. So please call me by first name. But he would not, alas. Now, finally, I take excuse from this is how only saints go. He was a sant. ऐसे संत ही जाते हैं. ऐसी मृत्यु सबको नहीं मिलती. What a way to go. He lived an event the way he wanted it. Thank you.
Thank you, Manoj ji. Thank you so much for that. Really heartfelt. बिल्कुल आपने जो बोला ना बिल्कुल सही बोला, बिल्कुल दिल से बोला. I'd like to request Aarti ji, Aarti Kelkar Hambate from the India Water Portal.
Thank you. Am I audible, please?
Yes, yes, you're audible.
Professor Brij Gopal, a tireless advocate of India's rivers, passed away earlier this month. We at the India Water Portal are extremely saddened by this news. We best remember him as someone who was honest in his criticism of river and wetland policies. He strongly voiced the need for conserving river ecology and conceptualized the river regulation zone, which would offer legal protection to river floodplains from various activities which can be detrimental to river health and ecology. Based on his extensive work on the Ken-Betwa river ecosystem, Professor Brij Gopal questioned the hydrologic viability of the scheme. Challenging the concept of surplus and deficit rivers, he questioned whether Ken had surplus water to transfer to the Betwa. He also questioned the way in which the detailed project report and the environmental impact assessments had calculated the per capita basin requirements for the two river basins. For him, the essence of a river was its ebb and flow. He opposed the taming of free-flowing rivers by building of massive dams and the threat they posed to the river ecology. Professor Brij Gopal founded the Center for Inland Waters in South Asia and served as the chairman of the National Institute of Ecology. He also served as an esteemed honorary member of the Wetlands International South Asia Society. Professor Brij Gopal's contribution in the field of aquatic ecology are well known. He was involved in editorial positions in a number of scientific journals and served on several committees constituted by the Government of India and the state governments. Professor Brij Gopal's imprints are everywhere, be it in wetlands, grasslands, or floodplain forests. We benefited very much from his inputs at the India Rivers Week over the years. His passion, his concern for our ecosystem, and the breadth of his knowledge will be deeply missed by all of us here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aarti ji. Dr. Somana Gupta, Rajasthan University. Dr. Datta, you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. We can see you. Please go ahead.
I'm Dr. Somna Datta, and I was the former head in the botany department in Rajasthan University, and I'm sure some of you might be knowing that Professor Brij Gopal had started his career there in Rajasthan University in our department. And he was our teacher back in 1982 in the department. And I remember his ecology classes, his incisive and a brilliant mind, his analytical ways of teaching us how the ecosystem works, its functions, etc. But before we could, gain more from him, he had left for the portals of JNU. He had become a reader and he had left Rajasthan University by then. So we lost touch, and it's only since the last 10 years, the past decade, 2010, that we reconnected. He was in Jaipur, he had retired and was busy with a lot of work. We did not know so many things about him, like what you all are mentioning just now. I'm hearing from you all, because we never kept track of his, what he was doing, and we were busy with our careers. But after 2010, it was marvelous reconnecting with Sir. He was absolutely eager to come back and reconnect with the department which he had left behind in the 80s and know what was happening there, what was happening in ecology. He had left a body of students here, the PhD students. They had worked here, gained their degrees, they were teachers here. But we all welcomed him back in Jaipur, and he was constantly guiding us, mentoring us. He was talking to our students. When I became the head, I remember we called him, and with a band of about 70 students, he was talking to them and telling them about little points about wetlands, about ecosystem in general, biodiversity. So that was a very good time, the last few years which we spent with Sir, because he was like an academic giant for us, and he was guiding us in so many ways. In 2010, there was a center which was opened in the university. That was the Center for Water Management Research. And I remember he used to come there and guide us to what kind of work we can do, the courses we can run, and all that. So we were very grateful to him for that. Sir, we were listening to him at various fora in Jaipur. He was, I can see some of our forest department officials also who are here participating today. They might be able to tell us more. But he was sitting at the biodiversity board, guiding them on the kind of work which should be initiated in Rajasthan, the forest department meetings. There was the wetland, I think it was a wetland board which was to be set up. He was meeting people there, guiding them in policy making, giving ideas. So that was a unique time when we used to go with him to these meetings. He used to tell us that yahan baitho, yahan se seekho, aur yahan dekho kya bol rahe hain, and I remember we used to be in those meetings and listen to his incisive and very critical analysis of things. And like Manoj sir said, that he was so very, very forthright and frank in his comments. And we have seen him speaking absolutely his mind out loud and not thinking whether he should be very subtle in his manner or anything. So that was a big learning point for us, that how if you're absolutely sure about what you're doing and the analysis and all that, you should be absolutely forthright in speaking that out, no matter what. So I was very lucky to be with him, and we were his partners in trips to the Sambar Lake, the famous Ramsar site of Rajasthan. And it was a learning experience. He used to see the wetland, and we used to roam around the salt extraction, illegal, and talking to us about that, and a whole lot of gamut of things he was educating us about. So those 5-6 trips which we did in his last few years were an immense education for all of us. And in fact, I remember his last words. He was telling me that मैं अभी आ रहा हूँ खजुराहो से, अभी सांबर जाना है हमको देखने के लिए. So that was a trip not to be missed, but we did do many trips with him. So lastly, I would just end by offering my condolences to the family who's present here. We will try to connect with them in Jaipur, and to all the friends. And I should also say here at this forum that he gave us the opportunity to go to Delhi, stay there for 3 days, and we attended the India River Week and really gained a lot of knowledge there, and also made a lot of connections, and which we are continuing even now. So thank you all for this opportunity to giving me this, share my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Datta, for sharing your thoughts with us. I'd like to request Dr. Somnath Bandyopadhyay, Nalanda University. Dr. Bandyopadhyay and I were students together, and we were in the same lab and in the same batch at JNU. Somnath, you're on?
Yes, Malvika. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. It's a very difficult moment to actually sit in this occasion, but also important. I would start by saying that on the 4th of January, when I heard this, I was absolutely shattered, because that was the time when we were actually a group of friends. We were still mourning the demise of another teacher in Calcutta University, Professor Amulesh Chaudhary, who died on the 30th of December. And then we were just planning his remembrance, and then suddenly this news comes in, and I'm thinking, like, these are the two individuals from whom I have learned my oceanography, limnology. These are the two individuals from whom I have learned my ecology, nature, connection to nature. And suddenly this is where we are, truly orphaned as intellectually orphaned, I must say. So that's the reason I was absolutely shattered. And it continues. But this is an occasion where I think it's important to mention a few things as a tribute. You're right. I mean, we met Professor Brij Gopal 32 years ago in a hot and sultry afternoon in 1988. And he was sitting on his computer doing some work on a 286 computer with a green monitor. And I just walked in from behind, and he scarcely looked back. And then I realized that this is a person, much later I realized that this is a person who is always looking ahead. And if you want to be with him, just be with him behind, follow him. And that's what we did. We sat down, and I have spent many a days sitting behind his riding pillion on his scooter and traveling on various parts of the Yamuna in those days. So that was an amazing experience. And then later on, much later, I realized that that was his passion, the Leela Kshetra, the Yamuna floodplains. So the Braj Bhumi, and this is where the Gopal naturally would have loved. And that's what he did. He loved the place. He loved it from the core of his heart. And that showed. So, of course, he's a great academic, that goes without saying. And of course, we did not understand many of the things, many of the classes that he took. It was very difficult for us to understand many things that he spoke about. But it was difficult to miss the vibrancy, the passion with which he would go out and look at nature. So the bridging between the naturalist and the experimental ecologist, these are things that I now teach to our students here. And that's something which he did. So he was one of those few rare, I would say, experimental ecologists who was a very keen observer of nature as well. So yes, he loved his work. He loved to read, and he was overflowing with books. And you are very right. That's something which always comes back to us. And I mean, how many books can you actually read? And he was always reading, and those books are always there. This love for knowledge was there. And that somehow rubs off to you. And when I first did my MPhil and then my PhD. And when I did my MPhil, I was working on Lake Chilka. And he made me visit almost 10 to 12 libraries across the country and to collect literature and do the literature search and write this review. And when this review came out, it was something like 72 pages. And that's the only paper which is co-authored with Dr. Brij Gopal. And it had 15 pages of references, some 250 odd references in 1990. And then, very interestingly, he asked me to write on top that this is a partial list of the references. I said, I have scanned everything, almost every library, and there cannot be anything. And he said, still, you have to write it. So we must have missed something. So that was his way of, and that was his passion. And I understand today that when he used to say that everybody gets a PhD degree. So once you go out with a PhD degree, you are equated with any other PhD. How do you stand out? And I think that was that little extra that was required, and he got it from us. It's true. A couple of my previous speakers have said that he used to go into very detailed explanations. But somehow, within those detailed I think there's one other aspect other than his love for books, his love for science, and his love for wetlands. These are things that are very well understood. But there is one other thing that I think not many is his love for Indian science, his love.
I think Professor Somnath's screen is frozen.
Yeah, I think he's freezing. Somnath, you're freezing in between. Are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Could you just wrap up in a minute, please?
Okay.
A little tight on time, sorry.
Okay. No, I just wanted to mention that one of the scientists that I had come across during my Chilka work was Professor Anandale, Dr. Anandale, who was the director of ZSI at that point of time. And I had collected some 1,000 pages of his original articles written more than a century ago. And these were painstakingly collected from the godowns of ZSI, Zoological Survey of India. And these he had very painstakingly microfilmed. And after another some 5 years, when I went back to meet him, he said something very interesting. He said, do you know that Dr. Anandale had not only worked on Chilka, but he had worked on various cave fauna and various other wetlands throughout the country. And this is something that he worked towards and he compiled. And he was trying to create that this is a pioneer limnologist of this country. So, and he presented this somewhere in an international seminar. So I think these are some of the important dimensions which will remain with us, which will define us, not just the love for wetland, the love for science, the love for details in science, but also the pride that he has given us in terms of standing equal to various other scientists across the world. So my last sentence to the bereaved family is, of course, very deep condolences. But at the same time, I would say this is not an occasion to grieve. This is an occasion to feel proud of the achievements that Professor Brij Gopal has left, and a very tall legacy that we need to all carry forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Somnath. Thank you. Request Professor Venkatesh Datta from Ambedkar University. Professor Datta.
Thank you so much, Malvika. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Thank you so much. I pay very sincere tribute to Professor Brij Gopal, who set an important milestone, for all of us to follow. He was not only a teacher, a scholar, but also a great mentor. When I was doing my doctoral research in TERI way back in 2001, almost 20 years back, I had a chance to meet him for the first time. he was organizing a conference in JNU on wetlands and the Yamuna system. And I decided that I have to work on this fluvial ecological aspect of river systems. He was the one who correctly defined the river systems, the integrity of river systems. I mean, you cannot find any better person than him who would be able to define the integrity of river systems and all the connected fluvial landscapes. When you see his body of work, you would be truly, mesmerized. I mean, he did his PhD way back in 1968, and his first publication that I saw was on Marsilia, the aquatic fern that he worked upon. He did his PhD on this fern, and there is a journal called American Fern Journal. I saw volume 58, which is published by American Fern Society, and there is a name of this Marsilia, there's a species of Marsilia which was discovered by him, and he named this species by Professor Panchanan Maheshwari. He was father of Indian embryology. So I just quote him. This is published in American Fern Journal, volume 58. While examining collections of Marsilia from all over the country, I found that some collections from Pondicherry showed few new species, and it is named in honor of the late Professor Panchanan Maheshwari, and it is called Marsilia Maheshwari Gopal. This is the name of the species. So I was looking for this, the detailed work, and I was really, quite enthralled by the body of work. The Ramsar Convention, we are having the World Wetlands Day just tomorrow. That is also 50 years of Ramsar Convention, 1971. In fact, he set the tone for the research in wetlands in India. He was taught by stalwarts like Ramdev Misra, who was father of Indian ecology. And, when the Ministry of Environment and Forest came, there was this committee, I just got to know that National Committee for Environmental Planning and Coordination. Before ministry came up, there was this committee in 1972, and Professor Brij Gopal also played key role in setting up this committee where Professor Ramdev Misra was chairman. We used to talk a lot over phone, and sometimes our conversations would go for almost like 1 hour. And we were quite worried about this Cain-Betwa link. Last time when I went to see this Cain landscape, which is very fragile landscape, then I admired Professor Brij Gopal's work, that this is such a, the kind of intervention that we have to make right now. And if we cannot do it, then the entire landscape would be lost. So we were discussing about coming out with a volume on environmental flows, because he contested the very concept of surplus basins. He said that all the rivers are over allocated, and there's not enough water in Cain River, which is itself coming from a very fragile landscape. And when I actually saw this landscape, I realized that he's the one who bridged the gap between the grounded theorist and the activist. We have very few people like him in India who could bridge this valley of death, where like we academic people, we try to remain confined in our ivory towers. We don't go and talk with the policymakers, to the bureaucrats, but he was the one who was quite vocal about bringing the research to the public forum, to the the policy-making bodies. So lastly, I would like to say that just 1 week before, I had a detailed chat with him. He was in in Khajuraho, and I was supposed to meet him, but because of my student's exam falling on 11th of January, I said that I will come in the 3rd week of January. He said, okay, let me go back and I'll come on 21st of January, and then we'll talk about this book in detail. We had already developed this concept note, and he wrote the table of contents. And he also said that we have to have some Indian authors. And when I said that we must have Indian way of defining environmental flows, like we are just following Western ecologists and modelers. He was very happy. He said, okay, let us work together and develop some truly local Indian version of model, because he was not very happy with this, all the models coming from, the Western philosophers and scientists. So I would appeal to this forum, the India River Forum, and all the friends and scholars, that let us join together and carry forward his long legacy, which we all could be proud of, and come out with a volume, share one chapter each, and we can also publish in his, we could celebrate his work and publish in his memory. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Datta. And that was a very interesting piece which you mentioned of Marsilia variety being named after him, and Professor Maheshwari. That's really a gem, actually. And I think the idea of a book, of course, maybe NI could look at taking that forward a little more, seriously, so that would really be something which would be fascinating to do. I think we have run through our quota of speakers for the day, and I think we have enough time, maybe, Siddharth, to open it up to two or three people if they would like to just say a few words. Whoever would like to say something, please do either raise your hand or just start talking.
Yeah, but please keep it short. Please keep it concise.
We've just got a few minutes. Yeah.
Maximum 2 minutes.
This is Bandyopadhyay. Can I?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Thanks, Malavika ji, for giving the time. I had been aware of and followed very closely the work of Brij Gopal ji for about 15 years. And this was largely on common interest in rivers, and particularly the conceptualization and quantification, if at all, on environmental flows. I will come to the technical aspect later, but today I would like to strongly express that I have been most friendly with Brij Gopal ji, and he was a human being of extremely high order. It's very difficult to find human beings of his capability, of his knowledge, of his competence, and his level of modesty. That knowledge leads to modesty. Professor Brij Gopal was an embodiment of this concept. I had been interacting more through emails than physically. He had invited me to Jaipur, but I could not make it. We used to meet sometimes in meetings, but our interaction was mainly through emails. And I have never found in the Indian community of scientific workers, many of his type, highly competent, and the power of modesty in putting up something which is scientifically strong. You do not have to shout if you have the strength of science, strength of knowledge, strength of arguments. You don't have to increase your pitch, because he was an example that soft voice can be most hard-hitting to the wrong scientists. And he was fantastic in this way of putting arguments and making the arguments stand tall among all the other arguments, and finally proving itself right.
Joyantala,
I'd say that
we'll have to pause you. We don't have too much time. We want to give some.
okay. So I come back to my main point that he and I had been working on this conceptualization of environmental flows. It's a pity that I have lost a friend, I have lost a collaborator, a sort of person to whom I could send some new ideas and get a reflection. But I always think that he will be active enough among us in the future decades also, when we talk of the integration of knowledge and river governance. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Banapadi. Seema, you want to say a few words? I saw your hand up.
Seema, you're on mute.
I think I have to unmute myself.
Oh, yeah, please.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I need not to repeat about his intellect and his contribution and everything, but I really want to emphasize over here, being a youngster, how do we feel? I mean, how do I feel with him? He was so easygoing. I was introduced to him in 2016, and it's been 4 years that I used to meet him quite frequently at Khajuraho office. In 2016, that was my first visit to his place, and I was feeling so burdened that I'm meeting such a tall person. But when I went there, he was so easygoing, and he welcomed me just like his child and showed his place. And whenever he used to talk about his new finding, there used to be a spark in his eye. So I'm going to remember him for his this to the ground nature, and he was really easygoing. I'm still unable to anticipate that next time I'll be visiting Bundelkhand and I won't be going to Khajuraho to meet him. He won't be there. That's a really great loss. But yeah, that is all. I mean, I don't know.
Thank you, Seema, for sharing that. That was most precious. It's really how he was. Savita, thank you. Savita?
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah, I am so grateful to various forums and persons, especially Mrs. Malvika, because I know her a little bit. I will try to recollect you, who organized this meet in memory of my brother, Dr. Brij Gopal. I know him as my brother, and his academics like headlines of the newspaper only. I am thankful to know him more through this meet, how much he was popular and loved by his colleagues and friends and co-academicians. Dear Malvika, after seeing you, after many years, I recollect your short visit at Hyderabad with him when you both were on your way to an educational tour. And I think I remember you had lost your luggage and everything. And you were for a very short time, even then you were only discussing about your technical issues. I can understand how much you loved him, how much you liked him as your guide or something. Thanks once again for the organizing this meet, and I will always miss him as my brother only. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for that. Siddharth, is there anybody else would like to say anything, or?
Can I say something busy here?
Yeah, please.
Okay, please. Thanks, Malvika. Brij Gopal, the name and the person was synonymous with wetland science and wetland conservation, not just in India, but to the world over. For a young student who wanted to start the journey on wetland science and conservation, he was the first choice. For a wetland professional and manager, it was he when everyone flocked to get his advice on. For numerous NGOs and conservation organizations, the name that never missed in that list was to consult Dr. Brij Gopal. For policy planners and administrators, he was an academician and wetland expert whom they looked up.
BC? Siddharth, has he dropped out?
No, I think unfortunately it's gotten muted. Sir, can you please unmute yourself again?
Okay. I unmuted now. Okay. After my, I think it's for some reason it's not. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're clear. You're clear. Yeah. Please.
Okay. After my meeting in the 1990s with the WWF book, thereafter he was a regular faculty, guest faculty at the Wildlife Institute of India for every wetland course that we organized. From 1980s to 2020, he was constantly in touch with me and never forgot to send his calendar every year on the dot of January. That is what I'm going to miss in 2021. Okay. I feel happy and proud that I was in some way involved in the RBS Earth Hero Award that was given to him for his lifetime achievement in 2018. There never will be another Brij Gopal, another perfectionist like him, and he will be missed by all his admirers and also by his family. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, BC, for that. Thank you. Would anybody else like to share any thoughts?
We have time for just one last person before we move on to Sudhaji and then Suresh. Yeah.
I don't see any other hands up, so I think I'll just move straight to Sudha. Sudha, Professor Brij Gopal's eldest daughter, would like to say a few words. Sudha, are you on?
Thank you. Yeah, so namaste everyone. I'm Sudha. I'm the eldest daughter of Professor Brij Gopal, and I'm speaking on behalf of my sister and brother as well. And first of all, I thank you for inviting us as family to this memorial. And there's so much I could say, but it's not easy, as after listening to everyone, I feel heavy as well as so proud. At time, I feel I haven't known Papa enough. And whatever I have is only the tip of the iceberg my father was, carrying so much volume underneath, which we didn't even begin to scratch. We saw him working from sunrise till middle of night or travel across the globe every now and then, leaving so little time with us. As family, we tend to set expectations to limited role from our parents. In last few years, we even disapproved of his intense work schedule and travel in extreme weather. We wanted him to rest and take care of his health. Little did I understand that he was not born just to be a father to 3 of us, but to be a mentor and guide for thousands who will take his work forward and keep him alive for years to come. Most people only complain about deteriorating environment, but I see he had a vision of a true scientist, zeal of a passionate youth, and he really took action towards environment education even in his age and health. He was unstoppable. Like any other person, he had many hobbies. I mean, I heard people talking about his professional side, so maybe I can talk about his personal side as we have known. So he had many hobbies. He left a grand collection of postage stamps from across the globe and a huge collection of coins from almost every existing and extinct currency. I also remember him taking us to movies when we were young, and he enjoyed watching Jaspal Bhatti's show, and he laughed a lot with him. From him, I also came to know about poets like Gopal Das Neeraj, and Papa also introduced us to Hasya Kavi Mr. Surendra Sharma, whom I still listen. Sometime in his work, many of his hobbies took a backseat. Photography is the only one that lasted, maybe because it supported his field and research work. While we will never completely overcome our personal loss, we really feel assured that his work and contribution will be remembered forever, to which he devoted his entire life with single-minded determination. On behalf of our family, I thank all his friends and colleagues for their heartwarming messages which keep coming in and which comfort us so much and give us strength to know that all his efforts and devotion, even at the cost of his sleep, rest, health, and life, have not gone in vain. I thank all the organizers for honoring my father this way. We are really humbled to see the deep respect he commands. Sometimes we need to see person from the eyes of others to really understand the worth of an individual. And you have all given us a chance to know my father better, and it will help us a bit to cope with our loss. And most importantly, I think my father must be smiling somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sudha. That was absolutely lovely, and I'd really like to say thank you to the family for being with all of us today in this moment of remembrance, and to share our thoughts on Professor Brij Gopal. I'd like to hand this over to Suresh Babu for closing from WWF India. Suresh, you're on.
Thanks, Dr. Malvika. Can you hear me?
Please, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Malvika. And at the outset, I just wanted to thank you for helping us put this meeting together to celebrate Dr. Brij Gopal's journey and legacy. And I also wanted to thank all the participants. And it's a rich network of professionals, experts, and family members who has interacted very closely with Brij Gopal sir. His work keeps inspiring us. His passion, his commitment, and his swiftness to react to things. It's kind of a model for all of us. I was reminded of a visit to Ladakh in 2018 August, and Dr. Jagdish Krishnaswamy was also there, and he's also in this call. We reached there and we were told to acclimatize. He had Dimox, and then he said, "Okay, let's go out to the Indus." And he was not feeling really well. There was breathlessness, etc., which is very common the first day. By evening, he was fine and he was raring to go. And the next day morning, we were out in the field trying to track otter habitats and climbing down steep hills into the river, walking alongside narrow paths. It's a memorable journey. And what we, some of us also was lethargic, but seeing Sir's passion, we also followed him, and it was a great learning. And numerous such visits. The way he multitasks is great. We are all bogged down with several things, but he never say no to anything. He always finds time for everything and responds in time and advises us. At India Rivers Forum, as Manoj sir said, it's a great loss for us. He had been always there in terms of ideas, advices, counsel. We will miss him dearly. And particularly in my own work and at WWF, he was an institutional memory. Many things that has happened in the 80s and the 90s, was very well known, and it's fresh in his minds. And always he used to say that, look, this happened at that time, and we need to follow that through. So yeah, it's a great loss to us. He always used to say two things. One, he started writing a wetland book, and he was telling, one of my last conversation, he said that it's going to be about 1,000 odd pages, and I'm sure that somewhere we can find that, and if we can support in any way to complete that book, because he wanted that to remain in this space. Dr. Malvika and others, who are students of Sir, and some of us who has worked with him and had been benefited by his advice and counsel, we should come forward to complete this book and take it forward. Last, my conversation and some of our colleagues, he, like Dr. Marotia said, he wanted to do a conference on wetlands at his center. And he was quite happy that he did some work there. And this is something that probably we should come together to celebrate his legacy and take his work forward. We will miss him dearly, and it was on a day-to-day basis, or at least on a weekly basis, we used to talk. We were all privileged to have been known to him and known him and taken his advice and guidance. And I feel really, really privileged, and many of our colleagues in WWF feel privileged that we know we got the opportunity and privilege of being guided by Brij Gopal sir. Once again, I wanted to thank everyone and condolences to the family, and with a promise that at IRF, we will, with all of you, we will try and do our best to take his legacy forward. And he has many unfinished dreams as far as our wetlands and rivers are concerned. Let's do our bit to make his dreams come true. Once again, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us together. Thank you, Suresh. Thank you.